The next morning on Aurora 9 was calm, but Tom couldn't shake the feeling from the night before. He kept replaying that one strange word he had overheard. Princess. Lyra was already in the hangar when he arrived. She stood near her ship, her coat folded neatly over a crate, wearing a simple dark blue tunic. She looked different without the long coat, younger somehow, but her posture still carried a quiet authority. "Good morning," she greeted him, her voice steady. "Morning," Tom replied, trying to sound casual. He didn't want her to know how curious he was. They worked together in silence for a while. Tom replaced a burned-out stabilizer coil, while Lyra carefully sorted through tools, handing him whatever he asked for. She watched his hands with interest, almost like she was studying him. "You fix machines very quickly," she said at one point. Tom smirked. "Years of practice. Out here, if something breaks, you can't just order a new one. You have to fix it." Lyra nodded thoughtfully. "On my world, it is not always like that. Many people do not fix things. They replace them." Tom glanced at her. "Must be nice. Sometimes," she said softly. "Sometimes not." Around midday, Tom excused himself to check the station's parts inventory. While he was gone, the hangar's main console beeped, a secure message from Central Command. He returned just in time to see the first lines scrolling across the screen. Alert: possible royal fugitive in Sector 4. Description: female humanoid. Distinguishing mark: silver crest emblem. Tom's eyes flicked to Lyra. The silver patterns on her coat. They weren't just decoration. They were the crest described in the alert. She noticed him looking and followed his gaze to the screen. For a second, she froze. Then, without a word, she walked over and pressed a button that shut off the message feed. "You saw that?" Tom said quietly. "Yes," she replied. Her expression was unreadable. "Is it talking about you?" Lyra didn't answer right away. Instead, she picked up her coat and held it in her hands, staring at the silver patterns. "On my world, the crest is a symbol of my family. My father was king." Tom's eyes widened. "So you are—" "Yes," she interrupted gently. "Princess of Veyara." The hangar felt suddenly smaller, the air heavier. Tom leaned against a crate. "So why is a princess hiding in deep space with a broken ship?" Lyra's gaze dropped to the floor. "There are those who wanted to use me as a tool. They wished to arrange a union between me and the leader of another world. It would give them power, control. I refused." "Let me guess," Tom said. "They didn't like that answer." "No. My decision could break the agreement between our worlds. There are people who see me as the cause of war. Others see me as a prize to be claimed." Tom whistled softly. "And now, there's a bounty on your head." Lyra met his eyes, her voice calm but firm. "That is why I came here. I thought Aurora 9 was too far for anyone to find me. I was wrong." Before Tom could reply, the station's intercom crackled to life. "Attention! Unidentified vessel. Approaching. All crew, stand by for inspection." Lyra stiffened. "They are here." "Who?" Tom asked. "Not bounty hunters," she said. "Worse. Royal trackers." Tom grabbed his toolkit. "Then we'd better make sure your ship is ready. To leave. Fast." They worked quickly, the sound of approaching engines rumbling through the hangar walls. Tom patched the last fuel line while Lyra ran system checks. Her movements were precise, almost military in their efficiency. 5 minutes until docking," the intercom announced. Lyra turned to him. "Tom, if they find me, they will take me back, and I will have no choice." Tom looked at her, really seeing the fear behind her calm mask. "Not if I can help it." The docking doors opened with a heavy hiss, and 3 figures in dark silver armor stepped inside. Their helmets were smooth, hiding their faces, and each carried a long, staff-like weapon. By order of the Royal Guard of Veyara, one of them said, voice metallic through the helmet. We are searching for a missing member of the royal family. You will cooperate. Tom forced a relaxed smile. Sure thing, but you'll have to wait until I finish repairing this ship. The lead guard stepped closer, scanning Lyra's vessel. Who owns this craft? Tom shrugged. Passing trader. She paid for repairs and left. Haven't seen her since. The guard studied him for a long moment. Tom kept his expression blank, but his hands were ready, one holding a spanner, the other near the emergency lock controls. Finally, the guard motioned to the others. Check the rest of the station. As they turned away, Lyra emerged from behind a stack of storage crates, her steps silent. She held a small device that projected a faint shimmer, a personal cloaking field. Tom raised an eyebrow. You could have mentioned you had one of those. I try not to rely on it unless necessary, she whispered. When the guards finally left, the tension in the hangar lifted slightly. Lyra dropped the cloak, her breathing steady again. They will return, she said. And next time they may not search politely. Tom rubbed his temples. Then we need to get you out of here before that happens. Her eyes softened. Why are you helping me, Tom? You owe me nothing. He hesitated, then shrugged. Guess I'm not a fan of people being dragged somewhere they don't want to be, and I've kind of gotten used to having you around. For the first time since she arrived, Lyra's smile reached her eyes. Then I am glad I came here. That night, while Tom prepared the last parts for her ship, a faint hum filled the hangar. Lyra was standing near the entrance, looking out at the stars. Do you miss your home? Tom asked. Yes, she said quietly. But I do not miss the walls. He frowned. Walls? The invisible ones, she explained. Rules, duties, eyes always watching. Out here, there is space to breathe. Tom nodded slowly. We'll keep it that way. Tom didn't sleep much that night. Every sound from the station's metal walls made him think of armored footsteps. Every flicker of light felt like the glow of a scanning visor. By morning, he was back in the hangar, tightening the last bolts. On Lyra's ship, she was already there checking the navigation systems. Her hands moved quickly over the controls, but her eyes were distant. You're quiet today, Tom said. I am thinking, Lyra replied. There are many paths, but all lead to danger. Then we just have to make one that doesn't, Tom said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. Lyra gave him a faint smile. If only it were so simple. While Tom worked on the final engine calibration, Lyra studied the station's star charts. She traced a route through empty sectors, far from the usual trade lines. This is where I need to go, she said, pointing to a small, unnamed system at the edge of the map. There is a colony there, hidden, peaceful. They will give me shelter. Hidden colonies, Tom muttered. Always in the worst parts of space. That is why they are hidden, Lyra replied. Tom leaned over her shoulder to see the map better. That's a long trip with a half-repaired engine. We'll need to make a stop. Where? He hesitated. There's a supply station in Sector 7. Old place, not many visitors. We can get what we need there. Lyra's eyes narrowed. And if the guards have already sent warnings? Tom shrugged. Then we move fast and keep our heads down. They were almost done preparing when the station's outer sensors beeped. Tom went to check, and his stomach tightened. 2 small ships were approaching. Not the silver-armored guards from before, but something else. Bounty hunters. He recognized the design. Dark, sharp-edged crafts built for speed. Each carried the mark of the Free Trackers Guild, a group known for chasing anyone with a high enough price on their head. They're early, Tom muttered. Who? Lyra asked. Hunters, Tom said, already moving to the control panel. They'll dock in minutes. Lyra didn't look surprised. Then we must leave now. Tom ran to the hangar controls and began the launch sequence. Lyra climbed into her ship, her movements fast and precise. The bay doors opened slowly, and cold starlight spilled in. As soon as the gap was wide enough, Lyra's craft lifted off the deck. Tom jumped into the co-pilot's seat beside her. "You're coming?" she asked. "Someone has to make sure you don't fly this thing apart," he said with a grin. Lyra didn't argue. The moment they cleared the station, the bounty hunters moved in. Beams of red light cut through space as Lyra swerved sharply. Tom felt the ship shudder under the strain. "They're locking on," Tom warned. Lyra tapped a series of controls and the ship rolled to the side just as a missile streaked past. "Nice flying," Tom said. "I was taught by the best pilots." "In the Royal Fleet," she replied, her voice steady even as another blast shook the hull. "Good to know," Tom muttered, "because we're going to need every trick you've got." Tom scanned the sensors. "There's a debris field ahead, thick enough to hide in." Lyra nodded and dove toward the cluster of broken asteroid chunks. The bounty hunters followed, their smaller ships weaving easily through the floating rocks. "They won't give up," Lyra said. Tom's eyes darted to the engine readouts. "Not unless we make them." He tapped into the ship's repair systems, diverting extra power to the boosters. "If I can give you a short burst of speed, can you lose them?" "Yes," she said simply. Tom worked quickly, rerouting the power. "All right, now." Lyra slammed the controls forward and the ship shot through the debris field. Rocks blurred past them, and the bounty hunters fell behind, their sensors struggling to keep up. For a few seconds, the stars were clear again. Tom leaned back with a sigh. "That bought us some time." But before Lyra could reply, a cold, metallic voice filled the cabin speakers. "Princess Lyra!" "You can't hide forever." Tom froze. "They're on our comms?" "They always find a way," Lyra said, her jaw tight. "Guess that means we need a better one." They kept moving until the hunter signals faded. Lyra finally slowed the ship to normal speed, the engines humming quietly. Tom checked the star map. "If we head straight for the hidden colony, we'll risk running out of fuel," he said. "We need that stop in Sector 7. Lyra considered this, then nodded. "But we must be careful. If the hunters found us this easily, others will too." Tom gave her a small smile. "Good thing we make a good team." For the next few hours, the ship drifted quietly through deep space. Tom adjusted the engine settings while Lyra monitored long-range scans. They didn't speak much, but the silence was not uncomfortable. At one point, Tom caught her watching him. "What?" he asked. "You are different from most humans I have met," she said. "How so?" "You do not ask for anything in return for helping me." Tom shrugged. "Maybe I just like fixing broken things." Her eyes softened. "I am not a machine, Tom." "I know," he said with a faint smile. "That's why I'm still here." Just as they began to relax, a small blinking light appeared on Tom's console. It was the proximity alarm. "What now?" he muttered. Lyra checked the readings. "Not hunters. This is larger, more heavily armed." Tom frowned. "Royal Guard?" She nodded once. "Yes. And if they catch us, my freedom ends." Tom glanced at her, then at the controls. "Then we'd better be faster than them." The faint red glow on the control panel kept Tom's eyes locked. "That's not just a warning light," he said. "It's a transmitter." Lyra looked over, her voice steady but tense. "You mean a tracker?" Tom nodded. "Yeah. Someone planted it on your ship. That's how the hunters and the Royal Guard keep finding us." Without hesitation, Lyra unbuckled her seat and moved toward the back of the cockpit. "Where is it?" Tom checked the scanner and pointed. "Behind the maintenance panel near the rear engine." They moved quickly. Lyra unscrewed the small panel, and there it was, a thin black device glowing faintly. Tom grabbed a pair of insulated pliers. "Careful. Some trackers are rigged to send a final ping if you smash them. What do we do? She asked. He thought for a moment. We don't destroy it. We move it. 5 minutes later, Lyra's ship dropped out of light speed near a drifting cargo container. Tom carefully placed the tracker inside, sealed it, and gave the container a push into open space. Now, Tom said, whoever's chasing us will follow that thing instead. Lyra gave a small nod. You are clever, Tom. Clever's not going to save us if they catch up, he said. Let's get moving. The Royal Guard ship was still on their sensors, large, fast, and closing the gap. Tom ran calculations on the nav system. We can't outrun them forever. We need to make a jump, but the engine won't handle it yet. How long? Lyra asked. 2 hours of cooldown, Tom replied. Lyra glanced at the map. There is an asteroid belt nearby. If we go there, we might lose them in the rocks. Risky, Tom said. One wrong move and we're dust. She met his eyes. Better dust than in their hands, Tom nodded. All right, let's do it. They entered the asteroid belt at high speed. Massive chunks of rock spun slowly through the black void, some the size of buildings. The ship weaved between them, the hull groaning under sudden turns. The Royal Guard followed, their heavy ship smashing. Smaller rocks aside instead of dodging. They're still with us, Tom said through gritted teeth. Not for long, Lyra replied. She pressed a sequence of controls, and the ship shot upward between two spinning asteroids. One rock clipped the Royal Guard's shields, forcing them to slow down. That bought us a little time, Tom said. Then we use it, Lyra answered. Halfway. Through the belt, an alarm blared. The engine temperature was spiking. We can't keep this up. Tom shouted. If we stop, they will catch us, Lyra reminded him. Tom scanned the belt ahead and spotted a cluster of hollowed-out rocks, mining remnants from years ago. Over there! We can hide inside one. Lyra guided the ship toward, the largest hollow asteroid. The moment they slipped inside, she powered down the engines, leaving only life support running. The asteroid's interior was dark and silent, the rock walls hiding them from scanners. Minutes passed. Then, a low rumble. The Royal Guard ship glided past the asteroid without stopping. They're moving away, Tom whispered. Lyra exhaled slowly. For now. Tom smiled faintly. See? Sometimes hiding works. She tilted her head. And sometimes it is the calm before the storm. Once the guard ship was far enough, Lyra restarted the engines. They drifted out of the asteroid and set course for Sector 7, where Tom hoped to get the parts they still needed. But the victory didn't last long. Another signal appeared on the scanner. Smaller ships this time, fast and agile. Not again, Tom groaned. Those are bounty. Hunters. Probably picked up our trail from the station. Lyra's hands tightened on the controls. Then we fight. Tom blinked. Fight? This isn't a warship. No, she said. But I have a few tricks. She tapped a switch, and two small pods slid from the ship's sides. A moment later, they released a cloud of reflective particles, a shimmering mist that bent light and confused targeting sensors. The bounty hunters fired blindly, their shots missing by meters. Tom grinned. Not bad, but the hunters didn't retreat. They kept chasing, firing wildly. One blast grazed the ship, shaking the cabin. That was too close, Tom muttered. Lyra made a sharp turn, diving toward a narrow gap between two large asteroids. The hunters followed, but one clipped the edge and spun out, disappearing into the rocks. Down to one, Tom said. The last hunter stayed close, trying to predict Lyra's moves. Tom quickly scanned the asteroid layout and spotted a path. Head 30 degrees left, then dive, he shouted. Lyra trusted him and followed the route. The path led straight toward a jagged rock wall, but at the last second, she banked sharply, slipping through a narrow opening. The hunter wasn't as lucky. Its ship slammed into the wall in a burst of sparks. "That's all of them," Tom said with relief. "For now," Lyra corrected. They finally cleared the asteroid belt and entered open space again. The stars stretched endlessly ahead. Tom leaned back, letting out a slow breath. "We're still alive. That's something." Lyra looked at him. "It is more than something. It is hope." Tom smiled faintly. "Then let's keep it alive." Hours later, as they approached the quiet trade route leading to Sector 7, Tom checked the scanners again. No guards, no hunters, just empty space. For the first time in days, they allowed themselves to relax. Lyra even made them both a warm drink, from her ship's small galley, something sweet, with a strange floral scent. As they sat in the cockpit, Tom glanced at her. "So, when this is all over, what's your plan?" Lyra looked out at the stars. "To live where I am free. To choose my own path, and if that means running forever," she smiled softly, "then I will run, but maybe not alone." The bright glow of the alien city stretched far into the horizon. Tall crystal towers reflected the golden sunset, and the streets buzzed with activity. Yet inside the quiet council chamber, the mood was tense. Ryan stood beside Princess Leora, trying to keep his voice steady. "You're telling me the enemy is already here? In your own city?" Leora's eyes were firm. "Yes, the Shadow faction has spies everywhere, and tonight, the council will decide if we fight or surrender." Ryan looked around the chamber. 12 high-backed chairs surrounded a round table made of white stone. Each chair was occupied by a member of the Royal Council, wise leaders with different-colored robes showing their clans. Their faces were serious, their eyes sharp. A tall elder named Verak leaned forward. "Princess, bringing a human here is dangerous. He doesn't know our ways." Leora didn't flinch. "Ryan saved my life more than once. He understands courage. That is what we need." Ryan wanted to speak but stayed silent, sensing the weight of this meeting. The air was heavy, as if the walls themselves were listening. The council's leader, Elder Mora, spoke in a slow, deep voice. "The Shadow faction has sent a message. They say they will leave us in peace if we give them the princess." Gasps filled the chamber. Ryan's fists tightened. "That's not peace. That's a trap." Some council members nodded in agreement, but others looked away, troubled. Verak crossed his arms. "Perhaps surrendering her would save thousands of lives. We must think of the many, not the one." Leora's voice cut through the tension. "If I am taken, they will not stop. They will attack anyway. I am not the problem. Their greed is." Ryan felt a surge of respect for her. She stood tall, her golden crown catching the light, her voice unshaken. The debate grew louder. Some wanted to negotiate, others demanded an immediate strike. Finally, Elder Mora raised her hand. Silence fell. "We will vote." A soft hum filled the room as each council member placed their hand on the table's center. The stone glowed faintly, recording their choice. One by one, lights lit up, green for fight, red for surrender. Ryan watched the lights appear, his chest tight. Green, red, green, red. The votes were almost even. Finally, it came to Elder Mora. She looked at Leora, then at Ryan, her eyes unreadable. She placed her hand down. The stone glowed. Green. The chamber erupted with voices, some in relief, others in anger. Leora turned to Ryan. "We will fight, but that means we need you now more than ever." Before Ryan could respond, a loud crash echoed from outside. The chamber doors burst, open. 3 armored figures stood in the doorway, their black suits glistening under the light. Their helmets had no faces, just smooth, dark glass. One of them spoke, voice mechanical. The Shadow faction sends its greetings. Without warning, they charged forward. Ryan moved instinctively, pulling Leora behind the table. A council guard rushed in, blocking an incoming strike with his energy staff. Sparks flew as weapons clashed. Ryan grabbed a fallen guard's staff. It was lighter than he expected, yet powerful. He swung it, blocking a blow aimed at Elder Mora. The impact sent a shock up his arms, but he held firm. Leora grabbed her own weapon, a slender silver blade that glowed faintly. She moved with precision, blocking and countering. The fight was fast and brutal. The intruders were skilled, but the council guards fought fiercely. One of the attackers aimed a strange device at Ryan. A thin beam of red light shot toward him, grazing his shoulder. The heat burned, but he ignored the pain. He lunged forward, striking the attacker's chest. The black armor cracked, and the figure stumbled back before collapsing. The last intruder looked at Ryan, then at Leora, and activated something on their wrist. A blinding flash filled the room. When the light faded, the attacker was gone. The chamber was left in chaos. Overturned chairs, broken stone, scorch marks on the floor. Elder Mora stood slowly, leaning on her staff. "They have tested our defenses. They will return stronger." Leora's voice was steady. "Then we must be ready before they do." Ryan looked around at the council. "You've chosen to fight. That means no hesitation, no doubt. We either stand together or we fall alone." The council members exchanged uneasy glances. But for the first time, Ryan saw unity in their eyes. That night, the city prepared for war. Lights flickered in the towers as weapons were distributed. The sky buzzed with patrol ships scanning for enemy activity. Citizens were moved into protected zones and the streets grew quiet. Ryan stood on a balcony with Leora overlooking the glowing city. "You could still leave," she said softly. "No one would blame you." He shook his head. "Not my style. Besides, I think I've started to like this place." She smiled faintly. "And I've started to trust you." They stood in silence for a moment, the sound of the wind carrying the distant hum of engines. Far away, on the horizon, faint dark, shapes moved in the clouds. The Shadow faction was coming. The next morning, Ryan woke early. He opened the small window of his cabin and breathed in the cool air. The camp was quiet, except for a few alien birds singing in the forest. Princess Lyra was still asleep in her tent nearby. For a moment, he just looked around, thinking about how much his life had changed since he met her. Yesterday, they had escaped the city guards. Today, they needed a plan. Ryan stepped outside and saw Tovan, the older alien mechanic, checking their equipment. Tovan gave a small nod. "Morning, human. We have a problem." Ryan walked closer. "What's wrong?" Tovan showed him the communication device they had recovered from the guard's transport ship. "I fixed this last night. It's sending a distress signal to the Royal Fleet. They might already be on their way." Ryan's heart sank. "So they know where we are?" "Not exactly," Tovan replied. "The signal is weak, but if they get close, they'll find us." At that moment, Princess Lyra stepped out of her tent, still looking a bit sleepy but alert. "I heard everything," she said softly. "We can't stay here anymore." Ryan nodded. "Where do we go?" Lyra hesitated. "There's a hidden valley to the east. My mother used to take me there as a child. It's safe. And there's a way to send our own signal into the deep sky, but it's far." Tovan frowned. "Far means dangerous. The path crosses the crystal plains." Ryan didn't know what that meant, but from Tovan's tone, it wasn't good. Crossing the crystal plains by mid-morning, they were moving. Ryan carried the supplies while Tovan led the way. Lyra stayed close to Ryan, sometimes pointing out strange plants or rocks along the trail. The forest slowly gave way to open land. Soon, Ryan saw it, A wide plain covered in tall, shimmering structures that looked like giant shards of glass sticking out of the ground. The sunlight reflected off them so brightly that he had to shield his eyes. "This is the Crystal Plain," Tovan explained. "It's beautiful, but you must be careful. The wind here is sharp. The crystals can cut through cloth or skin." Ryan felt uneasy, but followed carefully. The air was thin and dry, and the ground made strange cracking sounds under his boots. Lyra moved gracefully, stepping between the crystal spikes as if she'd walked this path many times before. Halfway across, a sudden gust of wind blew through the plain. It whistled like a scream, and small shards broke loose from the taller crystals, slicing through the air. Ryan shielded Lyra with his arm, feeling a few cuts on his jacket. "You okay?" he asked. She looked up at him and nodded. "Yes, thanks to you." They kept going, but Ryan noticed something odd. The crystals seemed to hum. At first, he thought it was the wind, but the sound grew steady, like a low vibration. Tovan stopped, suddenly. "That's not the wind," he said. "That's a scanner drone." The drone chase, from the far edge of the plain, a small metallic sphere rose into the air. It hovered for a moment, then moved toward them quickly, scanning with a bright blue beam. "They've found us!" Lyra gasped. Rian's instincts kicked in. "Run!" They sprinted between the crystal pillars. The drone followed, moving easily. Through the gaps. Tovan tried firing his old plasma tool, but the beam scattered harmlessly against a crystal. The drone began to buzz louder, and a red light appeared on its body. A targeting signal. Ryan grabbed a loose crystal shard from the ground. He waited until the drone swooped closer, then hurled the shard with all his strength. The sharp edge struck the drone's sensor, cracking it. Sparks flew, and the drone spun wildly before crashing into a crystal pillar. It exploded in a small flash of light. They all stopped, breathing hard. "That was close," Lyra said, her voice shaking slightly. Tovan gave a small smile. "Maybe humans aren't so bad after all." The hidden valley. By late afternoon, they reached the far side of the plains. In front of them was a steep ridge covered in dark green moss. Lyra led them to a narrow path that wound upward. At the top, Ryan's eyes widened. Below lay a hidden valley filled with glowing plants and a gentle river. In the center stood a tall stone tower with strange symbols carved into it. "This is it," Lyra said softly. "The Tower of Echoes. From here, we can send a signal beyond the royal fleet's range, maybe to allies far away." Ryan followed, her down into the valley. The air was warmer here, and small lights danced in the air like fireflies. For the first time in days, he felt almost peaceful. But Tovan didn't share the calm. He kept glancing behind them. "What's wrong?" Ryan asked. "They'll keep sending more drones," Tovan said. "The first one might not have sent our location, but the next one will. We must work fast." The signal in the sky inside. The tower, they found an old communication device. It looked ancient but powerful, with a crystal antenna reaching through the open roof. Lyra placed her hand on a panel. The device hummed to life, and strange light patterns began to swirl around the room. "This will take time," she said. "We have to tune the frequency, and we can only send one message before they trace it." Ryan helped adjust the controls, while Tovan checked the energy cells. Finally, Lyra began speaking into the device. Her voice was calm but full of urgency, sending a message into the stars. Ryan didn't understand the alien words, but he could tell she was calling for help. When she finished, the tower released a beam of pure white light into the sky. It shot upward until it vanished into the clouds. For a moment, everything was silent. Then, far in the distance, a low rumble began. Ryan looked at Lyra. "What was that?" Her eyes widened. That's not the royal fleet. That's something else. The sound grew louder, and a shadow passed over the valley. Whatever. It was coming fast. The battle was over. The alien flagship floated quietly in orbit, its once bright hull now covered with marks of the fight. Inside, the corridors that had been filled with alarms and running soldiers now stood silent. Aaron walked slowly through the main hall, feeling the weight of everything they had survived. He had fought beside the alien princess, Leora, through fire and fear, across planets and dangers. Now, they stood together at the end of it all. Leora was looking out through the large glass window, into space. The light from a nearby star touched her face softly. She didn't speak at first. She was just watching the endless sky, as if she was thinking about all the lives that had been lost and saved. You did it, Aaron said quietly. Leora turned to him, her eyes calm but still carrying the memory of the fight. No, she replied. We did it. For a moment there was no sound except the gentle hum of the ship's systems. They walked together toward the command deck, where the crew was slowly repairing damaged panels. Every alien soldier who saw them stopped for a second and gave a small nod of respect. These were the same soldiers who, only weeks ago, had looked at Aaron as an outsider, even a possible enemy. But now, after everything, they saw him as one of their own. When they reached the captain's seat, Leora touched the control panel. A hologram appeared, showing dozens of ships still in the sector. Some were hers, others were the allied human fleet that had come in the final moments of the fight. They're going home, she said softly. Yes, Aaron nodded. And so are we. But as he said those words, something inside him hesitated. Home for him had always meant Earth. But now, after this journey, after meeting her, the meaning had changed. Leora must have noticed the look in his eyes. You're thinking about leaving, she said. Aaron began, but stopped. I don't know. I thought I knew where I belonged. But now, she smiled gently. The stars can make us feel that way. They are too big, too beautiful, too full of places we haven't seen yet. Later, they stood in the docking bay. A small shuttle was ready for Aaron, in case he wanted to return to the human fleet. Some crew members carried supplies on board, others worked on the engines. Leora walked beside him, her steps slow, almost reluctant. This is where our paths could separate, she said quietly. Aaron looked at her. Could, but maybe they don't have to. Her eyes widened slightly. You would stay? Even after everything? Even knowing my world is not yours? Aaron chuckled softly. Your world became mine the moment you laughed that first day? He remembered it clearly, when he had nervously said, Hey, sweetie, and she had flushed and replied, Yes, darling. They had both laughed then, not knowing that moment would be the start of everything. But before they could speak further, the communicator on her wrist beeped. It was a message from her council. They were calling her back to the capital immediately. The rebuilding of her homeworld had to begin, and as princess, she had a duty to lead. Aaron understood. She couldn't stay out here forever, and if he stayed with her, it meant he would also be part of that future, a future on a planet far from Earth. He thought about the choice for a long moment. Finally, he smiled. Looks like I'm going to need a new address, he said. They boarded the royal transport together. The journey back to her world was quiet, filled with moments of reflection. Through the windows, they watched passing comets, distant moons, and clouds of colorful cosmic dust. When they landed, the capital city welcomed them with cheering crowds. Children waved flags, elders bowed, and soldiers saluted. Leora spoke to her people, telling them about the unity between their worlds, how humans and her kind had fought side by side, When she finished, she stepped back and looked at Aaron. Without needing words, she reached for his hand. The crowd saw it, and their cheers grew, even louder. Weeks passed. Aaron found himself learning their language, their customs, even their foods, though he still laughed when he couldn't pronounce certain dishes. He worked with the engineers to help rebuild damaged areas, sharing human technology with theirs. Every evening, he and Leora would walk through the royal gardens. They would talk about the future, not just theirs, but of both worlds. Sometimes they would plan new exploration missions. Other times, they would simply enjoy the quiet, watching the stars together. One night, under the glow of 2 moons, Aaron said softly, "We started as strangers. Then we became friends. Then we became something else." Leora looked at him, her expression warm. "We became a promise," she said. "A promise that no matter the distance or the danger, we will face it together." He nodded. "A promise beyond stars." They stood there, side by side, watching the sky. The universe was still full of mysteries, full of dangers and wonders, but they knew, whatever came next, they would face it as one. The air in the grand chamber was heavy with silence. Every warrior, every attendant, and every member of the royal court of the alien world watched in tense stillness. Ryan stood at the center, his boots planted firmly on the smooth stone floor. The alien queen stood across from him, her tall and elegant figure framed by the glimmering pillars. They had fought side by side for weeks now. Enemies had fallen. Trust had been earned. But now, the last and greatest challenge was before them, not a battle of weapons, but a choice that would shape the future of 2 worlds. A shadow moved at the far end of the chamber. The enemy commander, an alien whose armor shone like black, glass, stepped forward. His voice was cold. "Leave this world, human, and I will spare your life. Stay, and you will face destruction." Ryan glanced at the queen. Her eyes were calm but steady. She had made her decision long ago. She would fight to the end for her people. But this time, it wasn't only her world at risk. The enemy had threatened Earth too, using stolen technology to strike from afar. Ryan's mind raced. If he returned to Earth now, he could warn his people, prepare them for defense. But if he stayed, they could defeat the enemy here, at the source, and stop the threat entirely. The problem was simple. If he stayed, there was no promise he would survive. He remembered his first meeting with the Queen, how strange and uneasy it had been. Back then, they were strangers bound by circumstance. Now they stood as allies who had seen each other's strength, pain, and hope. Ryan stepped forward, his voice carrying across the silent chamber. "I didn't come this far to turn away now." The enemy commander's expression hardened. "Then you will fall with her." The floor trembled. Hidden panels in the walls slid open, revealing dozens of enemy soldiers. The room erupted in motion. The queen drew her staff, the crystal at its tip pulsing with light. Ryan readied his weapon. They stood back to back as the enemy charged. The clash of battle filled the chamber, metal against metal, the roar of alien voices, the thud of boots striking the stone floor. Ryan fought with precision, his movements sharp and controlled. He blocked a strike, pushed forward, and swept an enemy's legs from under them. The queen's staff spun in arcs of blue light, sending waves of force through the attackers. But there were too many. The enemy commander joined the fight, moving like a shadow, striking with deadly speed. Ryan met his blade head-on, their weapons sparking with every impact. Each strike rattled his arms. He knew he couldn't win in strength alone. He had to outthink him. He feinted left, then shifted his weight, letting the commander strike, pass harmlessly. In that brief opening, Ryan slammed the butt of his weapon into the commander's chest. The alien staggered but didn't fall. The queen shouted from across the chamber, "Ryan!" The crystal above the throne. "It's their power source." Ryan's eyes shot upward. A glowing sphere pulsed with dark light high above the enemy's seat of power. If he could destroy it, the enemy's weapons and armor would lose their strength. Chattawad. Problem? It was 20 feet up, guarded by archers and surrounded by chaos. He took a deep breath. "Cover me!" The queen unleashed a surge of energy, knocking back enemies in a wide arc. Ryan sprinted, dodging arrows and weaving between attackers. He reached the base of the throne, leapt onto the steps, and climbed. An arrow grazed his arm, but he kept going. The enemy commander saw his target and roared in fury, leaping after him. But Ryan had already reached the top. He aimed his weapon at the crystal and fired. The chamber exploded with light, blinding, searing, and pure. The crystal shattered, fragments falling like sparks. The enemy soldiers froze, their armor flickering as power drained away. The commander's blade went dim. He stared at Ryan with disbelief. "This is over," Ryan said, his voice steady. The queen stepped forward, her staff pointed at the commander. "Leave now, and never return to this world or his." Defeated, the commander dropped his weapon. The remaining soldiers fled into the shadows. The battle was over. For a long moment, there was only the sound of heavy breathing. Then, the queen turned to Ryan. "You have done more for my people than I ever expected from an outsider," she said. Her voice was soft but carried weight. "What will you do now?" Ryan looked around the chamber. The danger to both their worlds was gone, for now. But he knew others would come. There was still work to be done. "I'll go home," he said, "but I'll come back if you need me." The queen smiled, not the formal smile of a ruler, but a warm, human smile. "Then our alliance will stand across the stars." Later, as Ryan boarded the small transport that would take him back to his ship, he looked out at the alien city one last time. Its towers glimmered in the fading light, a strange and beautiful world that had once been an enemy's domain, and now was a friend's home. He thought of the first day he had arrived here, untrusted and unwelcomed. Now he left with bonds that no battle could break. The engines hummed, lifting him into the sky. Behind him, the queen watched from the palace balcony, her gaze following the ship until it vanished into the clouds, and somewhere deep in space, two worlds were safer because one human had chosen to stay when it mattered most.